the idea that Las Vegas is dying has gone viral. Fueled by videos calling out outrageous prices, images of the Strip looking dirtier than usual, and a general feeling that the experience just isn't the same anymore. And while these aren't its best years, and the peak was before 2020, Las Vegas is not dead. What's dead is the Vegas you used to know. That sense of magic it once had. If you come back after 10 years and stay at the same hotel you always did, you'll find that the endless buffet is gone, the free parking has vanished, and even the drinks, once part of the ritual, now depend on algorithms. What once felt like an exciting escape no longer feels that way. The energy is different, the Strip has no soul, but most of all, the promise that made Vegas a one-of-a-kind place has been broken. In this video, we'll tell you how corporations are trying to turn Las Vegas into a luxury entertainment destination, even if that means stripping away its identity. And to understand how we got here, we first need to understand what made Las Vegas so unique in the first place. In 1931, during the Great Depression, the state of Nevada legalized gambling, lifted restrictions on alcohol, and made express marriages easier. It was an economic strategy to attract anyone who still had some money to spend. At that time, Las Vegas was nothing more than a small railroad crossing in the middle of the desert. But that decision changed everything. First came small betting halls and makeshift motels. Then came the first resorts, funded by money from organized crime. The city grew quickly and without any planning. And for decades, its business model was to attract visitors with low prices and earn it all back at the casino. What Vegas sold wasn't real luxury, it was the fantasy of luxury. An experience designed so that any middle-class American could feel, just for one weekend, like a millionaire. That was the heart of the model from the beginning. In the 1990s, you could find all-you-can-eat buffets overflowing with food for just $5, or promotions where a room at a 4-star resort cost less than a roadside motel. These prices were impossible to find anywhere else, but in Vegas they made sense, because what was offered wasn't real luxury, but the feeling of it just for a weekend. And everything else, the free drinks at the table, the complimentary parking, and all the small gestures of courtesy, weren't random gifts. They were part of a plan to keep people inside the resort longer and to get them to spend a little more time at the casino. And you didn't have to be rich to enjoy those perks. You just had to gamble. As you gambled, casino staff would offer you a free drink or even a free stay on your next visit. That was what Vegas called a comp, and it was an essential part of the experience. The model worked because it was built to scale. Vegas didn't survive on a few big spenders, it thrived on a constant flow of average players. From Monday to Thursday, the engine was convention tourism. Thousands of executives filled hotel rooms, packed restaurants, and after work, spent time at the casino. From Friday to Sunday, the crowd shifted to the general public. Couples, groups of friends, bachelor and bachelorette parties. Between those two types of visitors, the city kept its hotels full and its machines running all week long. The most important thing was that the system offered predictability. Visitors knew they could come with a modest budget and have an experience that would cost 2 or 3 times more anywhere else. That created a strong emotional bond. Because Vegas didn't just offer entertainment, it made you feel like someone important. With this model, Las Vegas became a massive tourist destination, reaching its peak visitor numbers in the years just before the 2020 pandemic. In 2016, it hit a record 42.9 million visitors, and in 2019 came close again with 42.5 million. The Strip was packed, and the city had recovered its shine after the blow from the 2008 financial crisis. But behind that shine, without many people noticing, the original DNA of Las Vegas was starting to change. On one hand, the average hotel rate began to rise, going from $95 in 2010 to $125 in 2019. And on top of that, resort fees appeared, mandatory charges of around $50 added at the end of your booking. One of the city's longtime trademarks, free parking, slowly began to disappear. The comps started being decided by algorithms that tracked how much you spent in the casino, on your room, in restaurants, shops, and shows. Everything was measured and converted into points. They no longer depended on the trained eye of the pit boss, that casino employee who used to walk the floor, watch your playing style, and decide to reward you. But the important part isn't just that an algorithm decides now. What really matters is that the personal touch was broken. the one that used to create an emotional bond. When a pit boss watched you play and decided to reward you, it wasn't just a business gesture, it was human recognition. That direct interaction was part of the ritual of playing in Vegas. With algorithms, that bond became a cold, automated evaluation. And that's when part of the Vegas charm was lost, when it stopped treating you like someone special and started treating you like just another data point. On top of all this, in 2018, Vegas lost its monopoly on sports betting. Even though it was never the main source of income, it was a strategic magnet, one that justified trips, filled rooms, and boosted spending during major events. Once that advantage disappeared, traveling to place bets stopped being necessary. So the casino operators realized that if gambling no longer set the city apart, the experience had to. And so, Vegas accelerated its transformation into a premium entertainment destination. Over the past decade, the city has built stadiums and arenas that once would have been unthinkable. Allegiant Stadium, with room for over 65,000 people, brought the NFL's Raiders to town and made Las Vegas a Super Bowl host city. The T-Mobile Arena and City National Arena turned the NHL's Golden Knights into a local and even national phenomenon. Las Vegas Ballpark opened the doors to professional baseball, and in 2028, the city will welcome the Oakland A's with a brand new stadium right on the Strip. But it's not just about sports. Major concerts and long-term artist residencies became one of Vegas's new hallmarks. U2 launched the Sphere, the most futuristic spherical structure in the world, with an immersive show that shows just how far the city's going in its mission to redefine entertainment. Concerts, festivals, boxing, even Formula One, everything now fits into this new version of Vegas. The bet is clear. Leave behind the old model of cheap casino city and turn it into a global hub for premium experiences. The years right before the pandemic didn't just mark the peak in visitor numbers. They were the beginning of a quiet farewell to the old model that had kept Vegas alive for decades. At first glance, Vegas still looked the same, but it no longer worked the same. And then came 2020, which pushed the transformation even further. On March 17, 2020, Nevada Governor Steve Sisolak ordered the closure of all non-essential businesses, including casinos and restaurants. The Vegas Strip and other iconic areas were left completely empty for the first time since JFK's funeral in 1963. The consequences came immediately. Unemployment in Nevada reached 30%, the highest in the entire United States. What had once seemed indestructible turned out to be much more fragile than anyone thought. But the real turning point wasn't the shutdown, it was the reopening, which happened on June 4, 2020. Because when the city opened its doors again, it did so at full speed. Room rates dropped to historic lows, and hotels launched special deals and promotional packages to attract anyone willing to come back. On top of that came the government-issued stimulus checks, and a population that had spent months in lockdown, eager to get out. And yes, people came back. But they weren't the same visitors as before. The new crowd was more price-sensitive, younger, spent less, and didn't bring much value to the casinos. Many came to experience the city and fill the streets, but not necessarily to gamble or spend money in resort restaurants. While traditional Vegas visitors were looking for thrill, escape, and a place where they could feel part of something bigger, the new visitor, more digital and image-focused, didn't come to Vegas to play. They came to be seen. The gaming tables were full, but with low bets and fast turnover. Bars made sales, but with tight margins. And chaos took over the streets. More trash, more noise, and a rise in violent incidents. Some hotels even installed metal detectors, bag scanners, and special weekend security checkpoints. It was in that context that on October 12, 2020, Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo stated that the rise in violent crime was due to cheap hotel rates attracting people who were more interested in creating chaos than entertaining themselves. That statement didn't stay in the press room, it became the Strip's new unwritten rule. Operators responded by raising prices and cutting back on promotions. Classic buffets didn't return in their original form. Free parking disappeared entirely. And complimentary drinks were now reserved for high-level players only. Everything that had once been offered generously was now managed with caution. For the first time, Vegas stopped worrying about filling rooms at any cost and started looking very closely at the kind of visitor it wanted to attract. Now it mattered who came, how much they spent, and where. But beyond that, when Vegas filled up again, something fundamental had changed. The buildings no longer belonged to the people running them. Over the past few years, the major hotel groups had sold their physical properties, the hotels and casinos, to real estate investment trusts, REITs. But they kept the management rights. In other words, hotels used to own their buildings, but now they rent them, and that means every square foot has to generate more profit than ever before. To make things worse, by 2021, with the rise of so-called revenge tourism, it seemed like anything was possible. People wanted to travel, they had saved money, and they were more tolerant of high prices. That allowed the operators to validate their new business strategy, to monetize every point of contact. It didn't matter whether you gambled or not. From the moment you booked a room until the moment your stay ended, everything could become a source of revenue for the resort. At check-in, you're offered upgrades for early access, room views, higher floors, or guaranteed late checkout. Parking, which used to be free, now comes with a fee, even for hotel guests. In your room, there's no minibar, no coffee maker, and room service comes with a flat surcharge and automatic tip. At the pool, even regular lounge chairs now cost money, and cabanas can go for hundreds of dollars a day. In nightclubs and shows, there's priority access, VIP tables, and dynamic pricing based on demand. But if one thing became the symbol of the new model, it was the resort fees. They became mandatory, charged even if the guest didn't use a single one of those services apparently included in that fee. Vegas was no longer the place where the price you saw was the real price. Buffets were also reduced. Many that had shut down during the pandemic never reopened, or came back with limited options and higher prices. In their place came the logic of high-end, chef-driven restaurants with more sophisticated menus, but much less accessible to the average tourist. For a while, it looked like the new Vegas was working. Hotels were full on key weekends, shows were selling out, and massive sporting events and global artist residencies were turning the city into a showcase of international luxury. But slowly, the cracks began to show. The first warning sign was the disappointment of Vegas's most loyal visitors. That historic base of tourists who came once or twice a year, who knew the resorts inside out, who understood when to find the best rates and which rewards programs worked best, they started to feel pushed out. They felt like Vegas wasn't speaking to them anymore. And they were right. At the same time, social media amplified every case of abuse. All it took was a $26 bottle of water or a viral video of a gambler betting $25,000 a hand being denied a free smoothie. And thousands of comments would flood in, repeating the same message: Vegas isn't what it used to be. Even if these incidents were isolated, they captured the mood of the new Vegas. A city that no longer rewards loyalty, only immediate, visible, and measurable spending. The emotional peak of this new paradigm came with Formula One in 2023 and the Super Bowl in 2024. From a corporate point of view, these mega events were a massive success. Record prices, full occupancy, and global visibility. But for residents and many longtime visitors, the image was very different. In the weeks leading up to the F1, entire sections of the Strip were closed off. Access to local businesses was blocked, and many shops reported huge losses. For weeks, the city turned into a fenced-off urban circuit for wealthy tourists, while locals watched from the sidelines. The Super Bowl brought a similar story. Hotels doubled or tripled their prices, some charging up to $1,000 per night for standard rooms, and there was a wave of complaints about transportation problems, traffic chaos, and once again, the feeling that Vegas was no longer for everyone. In this context, the Las Vegas brand began to wear down. Not in terms of occasional visitors, but in the bond of trust with its most loyal audience, which is much harder to win back. That visitor who had recommended the city for years, who came back with friends or partners, who knew the terrain and how to get the most out of the experience. That visitor started saying maybe they'd never come back to Vegas again. The new Vegas isn't dead, it's still generating millions in revenue, but it's doing so with a more volatile audience, one that's much less emotionally connected to the city. While the historic Vegas visitor saw it as a place of escape and ritual, the new visitor sees it as a backdrop for social media. The problem is that once that emotional connection breaks, the brand loses power and starts to depend on price alone. And that's dangerous, because there will always be another destination offering the same thing for less. For decades, Vegas stood out from traditional luxury destinations because you didn't need to be rich to feel like you were treated like royalty. And that's what made it unique. But in its shift toward a premium model, the city slowly began to resemble, unintentionally, the same luxury destinations it never used to compete with. The problem isn't just that Vegas has become expensive, the problem is that it's losing what made it exceptional. It's going from being a legend to becoming just another product in the global catalog of luxury destinations. Vegas isn't a sports city, or a fine dining capital, or the luxury entertainment center they're trying to sell us. Vegas was always a place where adults did adult things at a reasonable price, lost money gambling, and still wanted to come back. But in its effort to make more money per visitor, it's losing the reason those visitors keep coming back in the first place. The only question left is whether Vegas will one day find its identity again. That's all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't miss the next one.